Hi, everybody. This is Vincent Jacob, and you're on my podcast, Hanging on Sunset. Today is another episode of our summer special series recorded at the Pioneer Town Film Festival, back on Memorial Day. I'm not going to lie, this was my favorite encounter of the festival because Graham Leader, my guest today, is a producer of a very important movie. Not just for me, but for a lot of musicians and fans of music around the world. In the late 70s, along with filmmaker James Salapsky, he followed then unknown artists who grew on to become legends in what we call the outlaw country world. Townes Van Zandt, Guy Clark, and Steve Earle are probably the most famous artists featured in this film. They were literally the misfits of Nashville music. They were not into mainstream Nashville country. They had something different to say and another music to showcase. It's something really different. It's something real. At the time, the film did not so well at the box office because it didn't have any famous names attached to it. They had difficulty distributing it. To find a niche audience, the film had to wait until DVDs and YouTube appear. And that's how I discovered it in the 2000s. Through a YouTube clip, one scene in particular got me. It's a scene with Townes Van Zandt playing Waiting Around to Die. If you don't know the movie or any of those musicians, go check it now. It's on YouTube, and I'm sure you'll want to see the whole movie after that. Because in the end, it's not just about the music. Those people featured in the documentary, they touch your heart. Almost an ethnographic document, HEARTWORN Highways, portrays first and foremost an atypical, maybe a little dysfunctional musical community, but with strong social values. Enough said, let's do the show. Hi everybody, this is Vincent, and today I'm still at the Pioneer Town Film Festival, and I have the immense honor to be with Graham Leader, the producer of HEARTWORN Highway, which is a very difficult title to say for a French person.
That can be difficult in any language because HEARTWORN, as a word, did not exist.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a word that's come out of this film, and it was a word that was the invention of the editor and assistant director Philip Sharper, who's still around actually, and we're still very close, very, very close friends.
Oh, that's nice.
So HEARTWORN is, people say, what? HEARTWORN, okay. Highways has an S, which for you is probably a bit difficult.
Yes, HEARTWORN Highway.
Ways.
Yes, I did it. So, for those who don't know yet, HEARTWORN Highway is an amazing music documentary about outlaw country artists, I say we can say that, which were pretty underground back in the 70s when you did the movie, and actually it was the first movie you produced.
Yep, it was.
And before that, you were an art dealer in England.
I was an art dealer actually living, at the time, I was living in Paris.
Oh.
That's how I come to speak a bit of French.
D'accord.
I was living in the Marais, in the Rue des Archives, so.
Oh, I love the Marais.
It was producing this film that is how I came to live in New York. So if I'm honest with myself, I hate to admit this, but I've been really living in New York since the 1976 when post-production on HEARTWORN Highways.
Oh,
So
right.
if the film changed my life dramatically.
I bet, because
Not always for the better. I mean, I love the film, don't get me wrong, but being an independent film producer is a lot more hazardous than being an art dealer.
yeah, because that was your first film. It was not your last film, and
No.
you have your own production company, which is called Sea Lion.
Sea Lion Films.
Sea Lion Film. And you're still developing and producing stories to this day.
I'm more than dabbling, I hope. I'm in the midst right now of post-production on a documentary that we've been filming in Zimbabwe
Oh, nice.
for the last year.
With psychiatrist, right? That's
yes, right. Yeah. There's a psychiatrist there called Dr. Chibanda. His name is Dixon, right. And he's been training grandmothers since 2006 to treat depression on a public bench called the Friendship Bench, and so it's in a country which has many, many problems and 16 million people. He was one of 9 psychiatrists who had to tackle a problem that was immense, you know? And he had no resources, so he came across the idea of grandmothers. And, you know, I was close to my grandmother, and very often I wish she was around today. It would have helped.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So I get from this that you're producing very different kinds of movies, not just music-driven movies. So what makes a great documentary for you? Is it
a great documentary is a great subject in the hands of a really strong director, and for me it's it typically would be my vision, but I will tell you, HEARTWORN Highways was not my vision. Any other film I produced came really from the whole genesis of the project, and the fulfillment was mine, as an overseeing kind of creative producer. But HEARTWORN Highways was Jim Salapsky's vision.
And he made you want to become a producer?
I got to know him. I met him in Paris briefly. He came to stay with me. I was living in London at the time we met. And he had never been to Europe before, and so he came to stay with me with his girlfriend, and he bought a deux chevaux.
Yes.
And he traveled all around England and parts of France in his deux chevaux.
My dad used to have a deux chevaux.
Oh, really? Yes. Great little cars.
Yes.
And he was actually a car nut. He used to paint them. He was a graphic artist before he was a filmmaker, and he was staying with me on and off for about 2 or 3 months. With his girlfriend at the time, and he played this music for me, and over the course of a couple of years, I guess it must be 2 years in all, I really became well acquainted with not just the music, mostly Guy Clark and Townes Van Zandt were what initiation for me, but he really shared his vision for what this film could be. And I there was a time right in the mid-70s when the art market just seized up. It was paralyzed. It hasn't happened since then in the same way. The art market seems immune to what happens in the economy. But then it just totally seized up. And I was bored, and I'd made some money, and so we took a trip down to Nashville together.
And you thought it would be a good way to invest your money?
Well, no, I just literally walked into a bar there called the Exit Inn. I don't know if it still exists. It might do. And Guy Clark was playing.
Oh.
And I walked in, and it just literally blew me away. And I said I hadn't really thought about producing the film. I just wanted to go to Nashville and meet and hear these musicians. Amazing. And I got to know Guy, his wife Susanna, and of those few days we were there, I just asked him what it would take to make the film. And this was November of 1975, and he told me a number which I thought was okay. I'd made some money. And so we were filming 5 weeks later. We were literally filming, and he had the crew was a 6-man crew, everyone in their mid-20s, right? And every one of them knew was close to Jim, and I had gotten to know them over the time our friendship developed, because I would go to New York on art business, and so everybody was lining up to come on board and make this film. And the grip was living in Canada. He was dodging the Vietnam War. He was a draft dodger, and he snuck across the border to. Michael Harris. Right. He came to work on the film, as did the editor Philip Sharp, who was also the assistant director, the sound man Alvar Stugard, who died literally a few days after Jim.
Oh wow!
Neither of them saw this film to get any kind of recognition, or it was really an orphan for about 25 years. It existed.
Yeah, I guess
on VHS tapes that were passed around by musicians all over the world.
It's a cult movie. Yeah, it's a cult movie. It didn't get a lot of recognitions when it was first out, I guess, and over the years building around a community of passionate musicians, I guess.
Exactly.
And that's how I got to know the movie in the first place, because I saw a clip in 2000, early 2000 on YouTube. At the beginning of YouTube, I saw that powerful scene with Townes Van Zandt performing "Waiting Around to Die," and I was hooked. And I guess that's a fan favorite scene of the movie.
Yeah.
To me, it's very powerful because you have three amazing characters in that scene. You got Townes, of course, that's performing an amazing song, but you got also that girl who's here.
Yeah, she's beautiful.
She's beautiful, and
she's doing the washing up at the beginning.
Yes, exactly.
I love the way she drives her pants on her ass. It's just like a country girl, you know. And you've got Uncle Seymour, who was really he was the heart of that community. It was it was. At the time, it's radically changed now, but at the time it was it was a very modest community that had and he'd lived there, I think, most of his life, and
he was 79 when he was shot, and he was born in 1896, which is make it even more powerful, because when you realize that, you're like, okay, now I'm not just watching a documentary, I'm watching a piece of history. And he was from a family of former slaves.
Yes,
which makes it even more powerful, because now you understand how music is intertwined with American history, which really is important to me. That's why I like to go back and trace to the history of modern music in the U.S., because ultimately it all comes back to the history of the slaves and slavery in the U.S. But I think if you want, as a foreigner like me, if you want to understand America to this day, you have to do that journey of trying to understand the history. And music is a good thread, I guess, to follow, to try to understand that. And that's why I think this documentary you've produced is very important to me and many.
Well, it's a nice perspective, and it's valid. Townes really respected, and Uncle Seymour was a sort of self-proclaimed. He wasn't a preacher, but he talks about God, and he talks about it's really just having faith, and having great values. And Townes, was he was a free spirit, but he found real comfort and guidance being close to Uncle Seymour, as everybody did in that community. He was really loved, and but he was also he's just a great guy to hang out with. He was really just an amazing human being. But yes, the history is interesting, and it ties into all blues and gospel, but also the interesting part of how this so-called outlaw country music. It really is connected to all kinds of roots music, and
I think there were kind of all marginals in a way that resolved around Uncle Seymour, right?
Yeah,
there was a whole community of people that were not.
It was impoverished. It was a poor
impoverished, and they were rejecting the mainstream.
The film was that. The film was all the characters in the film. Maybe with the exception of Charlie Daniels, which is the big concert scene in the film, were really sort of living their own lives and very much secluded from. They didn't want to be a part of the machine. They were very much, they occasionally wrote songs that were recorded by big name musicians, obviously, and they ended up, doing quite well.
Of course,
but,
yes. And I guess that was one of the core elements of your documentary, because you revealed yesterday when we were doing the screening of HEARTWORN Highway here at the Pioneer Town Film Festival. We had a little Q&A, and you said that at some point Willie Nelson, wanted to be part of the documentary. He offered, and you stick to that line of we're gonna.
Well, we were immature and we were naive, We really had when we filmed David Allan Coe singing "Grandpa, I've been thinking about you lately," and with a cutaway to the farm footage, which I think is one of the most beautiful scenes in the film. Actually,
And
we filmed that after we'd finished filming. It was just Jim and I. The crew had gone back to New York, where everybody was living. We disbanded, and Jim and I wanted to shoot a different scene with David Allen Coe. He was staying in the hotel that Willie and Waylon were staying in, and they had heard about the film because they were close to Guy Clark and David, and they knew and everybody had really enjoyed being a part of the film because we became a part of that community too. And so they sent down words. They offered. They didn't exactly beg, but they said, let them know we'd like to be in the film too.
We heard about
it, and we like what we hear. And Jim and I, we mulled it over for. I mean, at the time it was. It wasn't such that we were so. It wasn't arrogance. It was really Jim's. Again, we go back to Jim.
Sticking
His
to the vision, yes,
was so. We didn't know who was going to be in the film except for Townes, Guy, and David. Okay, everyone else happened to be put together as we were filming. All of them.
That's amazing.
So that was a miracle to begin with. But by the time we'd finished filming, although it took a year to edit that film because it's a very sophisticated kind of, as you know, it's not linear, it's not narrative, it's music driven, and it's emotionally driven. It's a stream of feelings, really.
And it's also like a real movie with an impressive editing.
Well, at the time it broke so many rules, nobody really could understand it. Frankly, the talent around that small group of young guys, Jim and Philip and Alvar, the sound guy, and
the sound is.
It was one guy with a stereo Nagra with a boom in one hand and
I just can't believe that. It's so incredible because that's one of the things. It's the quality of the sound makes it that you can actually just listen to the music and it's already a great experience. And by the way, I have something to show you. I know it's a podcast, but I purchased this maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's David Gorman who produced that. He's a good friend of mine. He lives in Topanga. In fact, I'm going to LA. You're the third person who's told me they have this, and you have it here.
Yes.
And this was a passion project for him. Before it became a passion project for Light in the Attic and Matt Sullivan, who put out that amazing box set.
Oh, yeah.
But this was David sort of approached me way back when he wanted to put out this. Actually, the music is, it was my son, one of my son's favorite albums, and it wasn't necessarily his favorite music.
So for our listeners, I just brought the double vinyl of the documentary with all the music from the documentary, and I'm going to ask Graham Leader if he wants to sign it for me later.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So I found that I think 5 years ago or something.
Yeah, it's been that one's been out for a while.
From Amoeba, that was the, I guess, 30 years anniversary or something.
Yeah.
And
that was the 30s, but there's another one that came out 10 years later,
yes.
Light in the Attic, which was a very deluxe box set that is, I think it's quite hard to come by now. It's become a sort of collector's item.
I'm going to have to go on a quest. So you also shot a sequel, which I haven't seen yet, but I'm going to see it this afternoon, and I just can't wait because I guess it was the same concept, going back to the same places and see who are the artists of today, carrying that same legacy.
Yes, it's very much so. For me, the sweet spot is that first of all, I really like the musicians in the film. They are Nashville based. They're a community. They're outside of mainstream, as you'll find. I won't tell you too much about it. You will find Guy Clark, Steve Young, and David Allen Coe. Oh. And it'll really, I think you'll enjoy it. It may not hold the same place in your heart as HEARTWORN, but it's a good grandson.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. I wanted to know, when it comes to producing, and especially producing music. So you already said that most of it wasn't really planned. When you had three musicians, three characters that you wanted to follow, and then they I guess they send you to other directions too, right? How did that happen?
Two things happened. One is we had very little time to prepare. We just decided, okay, we're going to film it now. That winter, as you see, we filmed it over Christmas. That's why.
Yes.
Silent Night at the end. That was Christmas Eve. What happened was Guy had his house was sort of a. It was the nexus for these gatherings. They would happen very spontaneously. You get a phone call. So we met certain musicians like Steve Earle, who was a 19-year-old kid. At
it's
the time.
Amazing to see that documented.
You see that at the end, yeah. Great musicians like Bill Callery and Richard Dobson and people like that. But a lot of it was just through listening, through word of mouth, and it was all put together for us spontaneous. Even filming David at the prison, was done on the road, which was I don't think you could do that today.
I was going to say like the hassle to get the permission.
Yeah, it was all like that. But it came to. I mean, we filmed a lot more musicians than actually are in the film. But we weren't really clear about. We're just clear about the values of, singer-songwriter. Every singer sings their own song. So it had to be that, and. They just, it was really just the quality of the music and the writing, and it just happened. They were about to emerge into, major influential,
actually,
musicians.
So much influential that back in 2015, I've been part of a kind of a similar project. So for French TV, so we filmed. I was one of the musicians, and I was the. With my wife Fanny that you met. She's the PR at the festival too.
Oh, that's your wife?
Yes.
Were you sitting in the front last night with her?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, I was wondering, you looked like you might be a couple.
Yes, we've been married
for
that's
10
great.
years. She's really sweet. I haven't had much. We haven't had a lot of interaction, but the little bit we've had has been really lovely. She's just been extremely thoughtful and friendly and charming, and she's lovely. She's beautiful. So
Thank
lucky
you.
lucky both of you.
So in 2015, we were approached by a French French director, and he said, "Oh, we know you guys are French couple that are performing music in California. Can you take us to the places you like, and we do a kind of a road trip together, and you meet other artists that you like, that you want to showcase." And so we did that, and we started here in Joshua Tree, and we've been around the area, we've been to Salton Sea at Slab City. There's a little community around there, and we did performances, and we wrote a song during the entire trip, inspired by all the musicians we met. And it was the same concept, not only underground people, and trying to show a still of what is Joshua Tree right now in 2015 through the eyes of those people who came to this place that is filled with music history too, with Graham Parsons that died here in Joshua Tree, with more modern musicians like Queens of Stone Age, like starting their career because they're from here, or U2 even being inspired and having their records. So we did similar trips. So I wanted to thank you because you just influenced us.
Did this become a documentary?
Oh yeah, it was shown on French TV. On
you should send me a link.
I will, totally. It's in
it's
in French, so you can watch it.
That would be great. Practice my French.
It was just a small cruise, the same, and we had fun doing that.
Seems like we were destined to meet us.
Well, actually, when I heard about the festival, of course, Fanny was the PR of the festival, but I asked, can I bring the podcast when I saw you would be here?
Oh, actually. Thank you. Well, I'm enjoying this, and I can't always say that happens with regular monotony. This is really, it's.
Thank you so much.
Very enjoyable.
And I can't, I'm going to look into all the movies you've produced also, because I want to.
They're very different. I'll tell you that.
Which is great.
That's made my life not terribly easy in terms of I don't have Yeah, hard to pigeonhole. They're all, even the music in a way, character-driven sort of stories. And I'm producing this documentary now, but I actually I'm developing a TV series,
nice.
Western in Australia set in the 1870s.
Oh, wow.
And as well as I have a romantic comedy, I have a love story set in Cambodia in the late 60s. I have a lot of different projects. That's all I've got, projects I've been developing. And they take years, because I really, I kind of function outside the system pretty much the way
you did.
The musicians did, in the mid-70s. I'm not necessarily by choice, but I don't seem to fit within a corporate structure very well.
So you make movies that matters to you.
Yeah,
and,
that's it's when it happens and when it works. I mean, I spend a lot of time working in order to work, but when it actually does, there's nothing more rewarding.
What's the biggest struggle? Is it the financing part?
Always.
And the distribution then?
Just both. I tell you, every part is the most difficult part. There's not
when
one
you're
part that's easy.
Yes.
Except, when you fall in love with a story, or you feel that, that you pretty much when you make a decision to develop a project, you embark on a journey. You know where you want to wind up, but you rarely get there the way you want to go. It's a windy route, and it's a lot of cul-de-sac, a lot of roadblocks, a lot of avalanche, a lot of
I can
rockfall in the canyon.
Imagine.
It's just it's really tough, and financing of course, but putting the whole puzzle together, it's just so I work on a lot different projects, and pretty fatalistic. I mean, I'm driven and I'm focused, but once I lock onto something, I'm pretty singular. But that's
the key, I guess. You have to be like
and you can only do that if you love it. You can't stay the course otherwise. It's easier to just do something else.
I'm asking you that question because I have that little dream of myself that one day I'm going to produce also a music documentary. So
you will. I'm sure you will.
And when we started
your passion and your knowledge, you will. You just have to be true to yourself.
When we started hanging on Sunset, I was actually literally hanging on Sunset Boulevard with that much music history over there. At the same time, realizing that it was over, that the Sunset Strip was just a touristy place, and a thing from the past that up and coming artists have moved to the other sides of the city, and so it made me reflect. I was like, it's like walking on a graveyard, but still reflecting about your own life and the meaning of your life. So I thought that was a good title, Hanging on Sunset, and maybe someday this will become a documentary too about the music in LA. I don't know.
That might be a good way into it, actually. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
You have to have a strong concept that you really that you can build on. And if you do, that vision will take you where you need to go. But
But I'm doing some research right now. I'm discovering things about my own neighborhood in Mid City that I didn't know. Like Ray Charles had his studio here in West Adams, and Little Richard lived here for a moment too. So you're pulling a thread, and it leads you to somewhere else, and that's the beauty of it, like the research and discovering, and then sharing that.
I will tell you one thing, which is probably not what you want to hear, but the reason I produced HEARTWORN Revisited, which is a film I'm very proud of, and I've really, really deep affection for it. I think it's in its own way. I can't compare the two, but they're definitely closely related, very closely related. My idea was to produce a series of routes, but from every genre. I wanted to travel all over the country and go into communities, because I think community is what we're most lacking in this world today, and that's what really, I guess in a way, without knowing it, that's what appealed to, besides the music and the characters, about the fact that this was really a community. And you'll find that in the sequel, and it's certainly in the documentary I'm producing now, but I find that really... But music films are, without a big name, you know, without Ray Charles or Mick Jagger or, you know, Kurt Cobain or whatever. Very, very hard to get proper distribution, you know. It's a tough market. And because I really wanted to do an ongoing series. I could see for the rest of my life, I would just always have a documentary in production that would fit into this sort of, you know, it was a seed that planted by Jim, you know, and I love it. I think it's really true, and I think it's got great value, but it's hard to pull it off.
It has an amazing value that goes beyond music, because to me, when I rewatched the movie yesterday with you, I thought about Claude Lévi-Strauss and anthropology and ethnology, and I thought also about I forgot his name right now, that guy who went around all the penitentiaries in the 30s and 40s and recorded like Lead Belly.
Jack Johnson?
No, what's his name again? Sorry, but I thought about this, like that there's
Lead
a
Belly?
dimension of anthropology to what you're doing, because you're showing the values and how a community is tied together.
Yeah, it's a social value.
Yes, the social, and that's to me that's the merit of the main merit beyond the value of the music that you're showing, which is amazing because they all have amazing musicianship. But that's what makes me feel that this documentary will still be shown in 100 years.
Well,
from
I
now.
tell you what's interesting is a lot of the people who came tonight, it wasn't a big audience, but it was a very, very loving audience, I have to say. I felt really well gratified. You know, I've been in screenings where it's just been jam-packed, and that's also thrilling. But last night was a special because just the connection between the audience and the film was so strong, and the warmth that came out of that, it was deeply touching. And
I love that you drop the mic for the Q&A. You say, "Hey, come closer. Let's just sit together and talk about this like if we're around a fire."
Well, it was really it was quite special, and I always like to talk about. This is the only film I ever talk about. I rarely talk about any other, because the director was such a talented guy, you know, and he never lived to see the love. But what I was going to say was that several of the people, even Kona, who works at the festival, has that same album you have because she collects vinyl, and she had never seen the film. She didn't, you know, and so many people who into this music came last night and they hadn't seen the film, and this film is still waiting to be discovered. It has not yet. It hasn't hit hasn't hit the main vein yet. It's still in a, you know, it's still just on the periphery of, you know, it's like you said, it has a really strong, devoted cult following, but it's a tiny fraction of the audience, I think, for this film, and ultimately for the sequel, because people do really get something out of it, and it is that time capsule. It's really true to that moment.
I think the more we are going away from that moment in time, that's why it's growing, because it gains in historical value. Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen with the sequel too, probably.
Well, it'll be shackled to this. HEARTWORN will always lead the way, but I haven't even really done anything about distributing it in the rest of the world, because Kino Lorber owns the rights to North America, and this film has a market everywhere in Europe, definitely in France, in your native country, but everywhere, England, Germany, Australia, Japan. This film has, and I think at some point there's going to be just, the wave is growing, but it's growing in its own way. I am not very good at marketing. And distributors like to sell what is low-hanging fruit and easy to
And you know
grasp.
what? I think internet might just be helping to make it even more widespread, because it's a niche documentary in a way.
Definitely.
And niche all around the world through internet. They can find their way to it, I guess. So
Yeah.
I think it's going to be living a long time.
Yeah, longer than me for sure.
And me, probably.
Yeah, I was going to say I hope, but I don't mean it. I didn't mean it that way.
Well, Graham, thank you so much for sharing your time with me and sharing these incredible stories about one of my favorite documentaries ever. So I'm looking forward to discover more of your work now.
Well, thank you very much. I have to say that the pleasure is shared. I've been very happy to sit here and share this time with you, and I'll see you later on today.
Yes.
Okay.
See you at the screening of HEARTWORN Highway Revisited.
Well done. Bravo.
It's the first song I ever wrote about him.
Is it? I had no idea.
It's about an old man I met in the bar. Well, sometimes I don't know where this dirty road is taking me. Sometimes I can't even see the reason why. I guess I'll keep a gambling, lots of booze and lots of rambling. It's easier than just waiting around to die. Been one time, friends, I had 'em all. I even had a pa. He beat her with a belt once 'cause she cried. She told him to take care of me. She headed down to Tennessee. Oh, it's easier than just waiting around to die. Well, I come age and I found a girl in a Tuscaloosa bar, and she cleaned me out and hit it on the sly. I tried to kill the pain. I bought some booze and hopped a train. Seemed easier than just waiting around to die. And a friend said he knew where some easy money was. We robbed a man and brother did we fly. They told her to take care of me. They drug me back to Tennessee, and it's 2 long years of waiting around to die. Oh, but now I'm out of prison. I got me a friend at last. He don't drink or steal or cheat or lie. Well, his name's Codeine. He's the nicest thing I've seen. And together we're gonna wait around and die. Well, together we're gonna wait around.
It's beautiful. It's my favorite.